Yes, and welcome to another edition of the Radio YesCymru podcast with me, Siôn Jobbins, and my guest today is the newly elected chair of YesCymru, Rob Hughes, all the way from Tredigor, Rob, is it, or Bidlinog?
Bidlinog, yeah, the Independent
Bidlinog.
Republic of Bidlinog.
Right. So, llongyfarchiadau, congratulations on being elected to the chair of YesCymru. In the decade, it's 10 years since the movement was founded. Just say a little bit about yourself, Rob, and then maybe some of the priorities. And I know we've also got a very big, important announcement to make, which you may have seen already on the social media and stuff. But who are you, Rob Hughes?
Yeah, I'm Rob Hughes. I'm 54. I live in Bidlinog with my family. I'm originally from Reading. My parents were from Pembrokeshire. I've been living in the Merthyr area for just over 30 years. I teach at Tredigor Comprehensive School. Been a member of YesCymru. Well, I've got a three-figure membership number, so that's always quite positive. So for a long time, firstly involved with YesCymru and the march in September 2019 was probably something that really compelled me to do more probably than I was at the time. And then I became chair of Yes Merthyr, and an opening came up to be a director on the Southeast. I've done that for nearly 3 years, for about 2.5 years, I think, and then have led on events as a director of YesCymru, and then as Phil Griffiths stepped down, we thought it was best to keep all good things in the Merthyr borough. So I've been elected.
All right, so
Chair
the Merthyr Mafia
the Merthyr
take over.
Mafia strike again, yeah.
Well, that's good news and good stuff happening in Merthyr, and you've done lots of sterling work over the last decade with the movement as well. So I'm glad you're in there. And then it's Sam Murphy is the deputy chair as well, who's a great boy down in Swansea. Did loads with the big rally we had in Swansea and everything. So it's a good team there.
And does loads on the board of YesCymru, as well. He's specifically working with local groups. Does a lot of good work, Sam.
So tell me, Rob, I mean, there's a big announcement that people may have seen, 2032, just been announced by YesCymru. What is this? What's the significance of the date? What's going on?
It's been the best, worst kept secret probably of all time. I would have thought we've managed to put. I think, despite the fact we haven't been committing to anything until the announcement on Sunday in the Eisteddfod, we had put 10,000 stickers out around Wales in a period of 3.5 weeks, which still shows how active we can be with members when we've got something to be active about. So I think since the formation of YesCymru, we've obviously always looked at independence as being our end goal.
Yeah.
And we felt, with the noises coming out of Ireland and with the noises sort of coming out of Scotland as well, that we're actually in as good a position as either of those countries in terms of moving things on. And so we thought, how long would it take, for us to be able to build a nation that's ready to be independent? And we thought that with the right political will, 6 years would be that time from where we are at the moment. If we can get everybody working together, that 2032 then becomes an option. We liked, the 2032 as well. In terms of it being probably halfway through the next Welsh government, and also during the term of the next Westminster government as well. Plaid Cymru said that, there's nothing going to be happening with the independence referendum in the first term of government. So for us to try and move sooner than that, I think would have been maybe working against our best interests. And in all honesty, we're not going to be ready in 4 years to be an independent nation. Yeah. I think those extra couple of years in terms of 6 gives us the opportunity, if we're serious about this, and if people are serious about wanting to live in an independent nation, their own nation, then we have had to come up with a time frame that makes it a realistic proposition. It also gives us plenty of time, Siôn, as well, to have the arguments. The great thing about the Scotland referendum in 2014 was that we know what's coming in terms of what we can and can't do, and what we're going to be asked, and what's particular sticks they're going to be beating us with. And so they're the arguments that we've got to be clear about making in favour of independence. And if we can do that, we're going to end up in a situation, I think, where winning may not be inevitable, but it's certainly maybe possible and quite possibly probable.
I mean, as you know, Rob, my little theory is that things go in about 18 years circle. So I tend to look at, so we had the 1979, well, we had the Pontryfechan, it depends, we draw the line, of course. We had Pontryfechan, big protest for Welsh language, 1963, the first one, where the referendum defeated 1979, the referendum successful in 1997. Then in Wales, we had a little referendum in 2011, and then Scottish Independence referendum, I think, in 2014, and then Brexit 2016, which sort of goes on from 1997. I think the Brexit was to some extent a reaction against Celtic devolution and questions about English identity and stuff. So I think 2032 is then, 18 years from the Scottish independence referendum. So I think something's going to happen around that time. I think the movement has to be ready for something. I'm not too sure what it's going to be. We need to make sure that the independence question's a big one. I think it'd be something around that, or maybe rejoining the EU about that time. I think something.
Well, I mean, we've got an issue. I mean, we've met recently with the Welsh government, who are clearly pro EU. I voted Remain in the 2016 referendum, but that was dominated in Wales. I live in Merthyr Borough. I work in Blaen y Gwent, two of the biggest out voting areas in Wales, and I can tell you from personal experience. I work in a school. It's a big school in a town in Blaen y Gwent. That it was dominated by issues that didn't affect people in Wales, and specifically in the valleys. What was happening in other areas of the UK dominated. I mean, we had an exceedingly high per head financial benefit from being in the EU and Blaen y Gwent specifically, and in Merthyr, but in Blaen y Gwent specifically. And the debate wasn't about that, and it wasn't about the money that was coming to Blaen y Gwent and the opportunities that were being given to people in Blaen y Gwent. It was about what might be happening in Kent or Lincolnshire or something, or somewhere else. So my personal stance on the EU is a very, very simple one. It's going to be up to the people of Wales. Providing we meet the criteria to rejoin the EU, it's up to the people of Wales, but based on an argument based in Wales, rather than.
I think there's going to be there's something big going to happen around that time. I think.
Wales is leaving. Wales is leaving the UK, Sean.
So that's the argument, and I think there will be other big arguments across the UK as well, in somehow, because I think that it tends to be a generational thing. So I mean, I'll say with
just to stay on the point for a second, Brexit's an interesting one, because if we're talking about a rejoining of the EU, are we doing that as part of the UK, or are we doing that as an independent Wales? Because if we do it as part of the UK, obviously one of the sticks that the Yes campaign in Scotland was beaten with was, you leave, you lose access to the EU. If we rejoin before we become independent, then that's another set. At the moment, that stick doesn't exist, does it? So I would, if we are rejoining the EU, I would much prefer to join the EU as an independent Wales rather than as part of the UK, because I think that puts more barriers up to us leaving in the future.
Yeah, well, I think that's another slightly different argument and discussion rather. My view on the EU is quite similar to the Baltic states. If you're a small country, you're going to be somehow part of a bigger network of some sort. The choice for the Estonians is it's either USSR or Russia, or the EU. Well, I'm not comparing Westminster quite to Moscow, but I think it's either we're part of London rule or we're part of the EU rule. So I mean, it's a better option for me. So in terms of the movement itself, so obviously you understand that the 2032 target is also working with our friends in Scotland and Ireland as well. So they adopting this target as well.
There are discussions. I think they've both put out earlier dates. I think in Scotland they put out a date of 2029 in the first instance, which I don't think is going to be realistic. I'll come back to Scotland in a second. I think Ireland have looked at 2030 for a reunification, and that's far. I think that's far more possible. I think the Scots have got a problem in terms of a pathway to independence. that doesn't exist, with us. I think on any legal precedent, and the fact that Scotland had a referendum, it can be once in a generation or once in whatever, but they've had a referendum. We haven't. We also didn't choose to join this union. So I don't think there's any way that we won't get a Section 30 because if we don't, Sean, the one thing that really pushes Welsh independence is the feeling of injustice. And the feeling of injustice. I mean, things like the Crown Estate and rail fund have been fantastic for us. But if we go to the fact that Scotland were allowed an independence referendum, but we don't get one, I think that level of injustice would push support, beyond levels that even I would dream of. And so I think we'll get one. And I think
right. I think you're more optimistic than I am, Rob. I've seen, especially now since Burnham's come in, for the Labour, well, it's also Labour, the Prime Minister. I'm seeing a new, slightly more nuanced, muscular Britishness unionism. So it's basically saying, know your place, Celts. But they're saying it with a smile. So Starmer was too candid to understand how it was worked. Burnham is coming out with sort of devolution for everyone except Wales and Scotland, of course.
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable. If you remember the last time I was on with Phil, which was a while ago, and prior to quite a long way prior to the Senedd election, and I think Labour had just been elected, and we were talking about whether Labour would be bad for the independence movement, and I told you it'd be good. And we've now got a Plaid Cymru government after having Labour and Labour in. I feel as confident as I did when I said that would happen. I feel as confident that we will get that we will get one. I can't see how there's any way that we can't, because this is, clearly it's not a union of equals, but it's sold as a union of equals, and that's their selling point. Well, in the union of equals,
the selling point for Labour will be now this new unionism is basically, why do you need to worry your little heads with independence, Wales? We can do everything for you, like Daddy Westminster. And we're already seeing this business of, I know it's a lot of policies you and I maybe would agree with, but it's also trying to charge in and take over remits of the Welsh Parliament.
Yeah.
And also this sort of weird system where Wales now has to adopt everything Labour does, or they make a song and dance about it. So I'm not... Burnham's already told Scots they can't have a second referendum, which sort of gives you, from my point of view, a reason to have a second referendum. If London tells you can't, that just proves how imbalanced this so-called union is. But I'm thinking they're not. I can't see Kinnock devolving anything to Wales. I mean, that we can use that argument and say, well, look, it's not going to fund anything.
I completely agree. I completely agree with you in terms of Kinnock. But I think after after Joe Stevens, and now having Kinnock is, I can't remember what the title is. Is it governor? Is it colonialist governor?
Yeah, viceroy, something. Yeah,
whatever they call it. Just I think that the general questioning of the validity of the role is going to increase and intensify to the point where the role is not sustainable. I think Joe Stevens was great. We had a fantastic day in the Eisteddfod last year, when we were in Wrexham, where I had Joe Stevens and Elin Morgan, who was First Minister, write to me on the same day. Elin Morgan telling me that, don't worry, we've got it under control. We're working on the transfer of the Crown Estates. And Joe Stevens writing to me at the same day saying, we've discussed it, you're getting nothing. And the lovely thing to be able to forward Joe Stevens' letter to Elin Morgan.
Elin Morgan was totally, I mean, at a political point of view. Well, I mean, as a personal point of view, I felt somewhat sorry for Elin Morgan, though. She was basically knocked, she was kneecapped by her own party.
Yeah,
so it'll be interesting to see what Labour does. Do they decide, okay, we are going to devolve Crown Estate, which is from a London point of view is nothing really, so nothing ball.
Yeah, we don't want them. We don't want them to really. I mean, I'm looking from an independent. I want to be able to go. Sean, I'm dead honest about this. Into independence arguments, going. I believe in a positive future for Wales. I think there's so many things that we can do as a country that will be hugely positive and benefit people who live in Wales. But also, I quite enjoy London telling us no. It's far easier to speak to people, trying to attract new members, trying to draw out, trying to get a bit of oomph into the movement on the back of a London no. Crown Estates is bonkers. If they had any thought or understanding of what was happening in Wales, this would be done and dusted. In a way, it's great news that they haven't done it, because they really have no understanding of what happens in Wales. We've got a Plaid government. They've got, 43 seats? They're 9 short of a majority. I mean, nobody ever saw this coming. They're expected to get, I think, they're projected to get 31 seats in the Westminster election, I think, is the latest projection that I've seen. And they still not even chucking us the bones, the bones of the Crown Estates, the crumbs from the table of the Crown Estates. That's how far removed Westminster is from the needs and wants of the people of Wales. I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a very, very hard position for unionists to defend. And the longer they give us these things are the gimmies. Like these, we shouldn't even be talking about it.
I know.
The longer they do it, the better.
Yeah, it works. That works. Okay, Rob, I'll give you two different positions then. One, it works if the Welsh public know about things like Crown Estate, which I think actually, because of YesCymru's work and then later by Plaid, well, actually it started off with an interview we had with people like Liz Roberts and Jonathan Edwards years ago on Radio YesCymru podcast. Go back to listen to them. I'm talking like several years ago, but that is fairly much in the people's agenda now, but that needs to be prioritized. So I mean, people can have a view on Crown Estate, think it's unfair, but then if it's like number 7 on the list, it's not going to be a big mover and shaker. So these things, Crown Estate, the funding or the lack of powers, I think is more important than the funding. Works if people know about them. And secondly, I think, the other argument, I'm presuming you'd hear maybe from Plaid, would be, okay, we can't go for independence now because we need to have so-and-so powers before we do this. And then people can say it works, and the Plaid government has worked to get things done, and then maybe they'll consider independence. If we go for it too early, people aren't going to vote because they say, look, it's untested, we don't know how it's going to work, you don't have the powers of it. So I mean, the incremental argument, and it's interesting looking at what's happening with Flanders in Belgium, and they're just going, they have a nationalist Flemish government in Belgium, which is a bit like the SNP running Britain, which is rather bonkers, but in coalition. But they're just slicing the powers from Belgium until in the end is basically you're talking about currency. Well, not even currency, talking about the armed forces, maybe pensions. Yeah. So I don't know. So the argument, that people say, okay, hold on, Rob, we agree with you. You're a good boy. Heart is in the right place, slightly patronising always.
That's right.
Yeah, right. But we need to have these powers like Crown Estate, like social care, policing stuff first before we go for the big one.
Yeah, I mean, we've met with the Welsh government. I mean, we know where we know where we are, and we know where they are as well. Right. And they're certainly coming from the position that you're coming from there. That without an incremental growth in Datganoli and devolution, then we'll never know. However, I think firstly that our window is probably right for 2032. I think our window, if Plaid can win a second term, and they're certainly on course for that, at the moment, and there's far more, for example, or there's more reform. Reform we're going to do in the Westminster election, or more of the same with Labour, and we know that Labour become less popular the longer they're in. I just think 2032 is right, and we could take power one power at a time, take that, take this, and they're focusing on the devolving of justice. They're talking borrowing powers and finance powers. But if we can make people in Wales believe that we can run our own country as Welsh people, and we can win a referendum, then there's nothing stopping us having one, rather than political will. And I think if we get to that point, Plaid will have been in government for 6 years. They will have known how the transfer of powers have gone. if they're not going to get, for example, policing and justice and policing is a big one for them. It's one again.
Yeah.
It's a fairly straightforward one to get. If they're not going to get them from the king of devolution, Burnham, if they're not going to get that, there's going to come a point where we can set incremental powers is not going to be the way to go. The way to go is we're going to need them all. And if you look at both of our standpoints at the moment, I'm sort of and going with what you said about Burnham, wanting to devolve everything to everyone apart from the Welsh and the Scottish, I'm sort of more confident that we will be in a point where we're going to just have to say, I tell you, we're not going to have to be able to wait for incremental powers. We're going to have all the powers at once. And Plaid, if they are in the second term of a government, they certainly haven't ruled out working towards an independence referendum by then. I would like them to be, where independence is written within. I know I made a motion at Plaid Cymru conference about 20 years ago, putting independence as a central focus for the party.
Yeah.
And so this is a point that they're going to need to come out of their shell a little bit. I think independence scares Plaid still, and I think it always has.
No doubt. Yeah, and I think they also just look. I mean, the independence support is kicking around 20. Sorry.
Why? I mean, if you look at people.
Why? I think because in a way, because loads of reasons, Rob. I think it goes back to 700 years of being, we've all got a dent in our forehead of being pointed and said you're not good enough to be independent. So I think that runs deep. And also they look at the polls, and the polling is what quarter to a third people support independence. So it's not a majority. It's quite far from that. So I mean, it's solid.
If you remove don't knows, we're probably mid-30s. We're probably where Plaid Cymru are in terms of their vote at the moment. Yeah. And the people who support independence are not going to withdraw their vote for Plaid, because Plaid come out in terms of independence. I'd say the independence vote and the Plaid vote are very, very similar. And I don't think one is massively more than the other. So I don't think it's as dangerous. I mean, people said, they've lent Plaid Cymru, they've lent Plaid Cymru their vote. They still get the chance to vote no in a referendum, right? So the people are saying, right, I'm lending Plaid Cymru my vote. I hope they don't do it. I hope they don't do independence with it. Would still have a chance to vote no in a referendum. So in a way, I think that it's probably less risky than they feel that it is.
So I mean, a message for Plaid. If they obviously they're going on, Plaid has been Plaid's policy for decades. So there's nothing new about this or anything sort of hidden. Basically try and get any kind of powers for get a Senate to get a Parliament to begin with, and have powers on if it 1/4 cake is better than no cake at all. So I understand that. Do you think from their strategic point of view and tactical point of view today, if they said, I can't see Burnham devolving anything, Kinnock, Stevens, they're all the same MPs, they haven't changed.
No.
And, but Burnham is talk about devolving stuff to probably English counties. You'd try maybe all of a sudden people talk about Mayor of Cardiff, they're telling us not enough, there isn't enough research about devolving policing and justice, although there's 3 serious commissions written on it.
Yeah.
No, there isn't even a pressure group or a Facebook group for Mayor of Cardiff, whatever. And all of a sudden, that's a player. Nobody cares about. It's a total waste of time.
There's look at the.
So they're going to try and. I think Labour will try and. So Labour are going to try and sidestep the Senate, the Parliament, and go and give powers to local councils if they can.
Or areas like the Northwest, which will include North Wales, and areas like a Greater Bristol City Zone, which would include South Wales.
Yeah,
there's these things aren't new either. There's been years of building up of these zones which seem to split Wales in half, with half belonging to Manchester and Liverpool and half belonging to Bristol. So. I just think that Plaid at some point, in order to maintain the status quo, we'll have to be a little bit more fierce. But it's
so strategically and tactically, if Plaid is saying, look, if you're not going to devolve anything, there's policing, Crown Estate, full rail funding or control of rail, so we don't get England and Wales business with HS2. If we're not going to do that, we're going for independence. I know. I mean. Because basically that's the only stick we got left. I mean, so if Burnham is going to play stupid, silly games with, trying to devolve, I would say, it's funny, isn't it? People are against devolution or for favor of devolution, all kinds of things, except it's a national devolution. You know what I mean? And then they'd spend thousands and thousands of pounds again a branding agency to get a logo for this new devolved mayor or whatever. So I mean, it's in a way, practically for Pride. If Pride could say, tell Burnham, look, if you're not going to devolve for anything, well, we are going to go just for independence, or rather, say independence is the only option.
Yeah. I mean, we asked, and then Pride fell a little short of this in terms of our meeting, but we asked for a positive statement just from Pride on the basis that yes, reaffirmation really that yes, they do support independence. And I understand the situation. They're talking to us. I mean, that's great, right? YesCymru, an independence movement, with a 12-year history, is getting to discuss independence with the Welsh government. That's a massive step forward from anywhere that we've been before. But I do feel that the reluctance is slightly. I understand it, but I do think it's slightly misguided. I don't think devolution is going to happen. I don't think powers necessarily are going to come. I think when powers do come, sometimes they also have sort of conditions on them which makes them more difficult. Westminster are looking to bypass the Welsh government at every opportunity. And so I do think it does come to the point where everybody has to say, I mean, not independence as a stick and a threat. I mean, let's look at the potential of an independent Wales. Let's build that picture. I live in an area, as you know, Sean, I do lots of people in Wales. I live in an area with excessively high child poverty levels generally. We've got low car ownership where I am, high unemployment, people with problems to access housing. So let's instead of using independence as a threat, let's build it as the way out of the situation that we're in at the moment. Let's start talking, as much as we got to talk about things like, what currency we use, how pensions, all the things that the Scots were beaten with in 2014, and making sure that we got comprehensive answers to them. Let's look also at what we can build with our country and how we can make life better for people and for future generations. So I want to see independence, and I agree it can be used as a threat, but I want to see it as more than a threat. I want to see it as a vision.
Well, and we've been watching
that we can all believe in.
Yeah, and we've been watching the Commonwealth Games. And it's just it's so great to see the Welsh flag and the proper anthem, and you can see the athletes actually believe in it. It actually works for them. This should be.
I struggle to watch the Olympics. Genuinely, my kids think
I can't watch the Olympics.
I can't watch the Olympics. If a Welsh person wins, my joy of a Welsh gold medal is tempered by the fact that I'll be seeing the Union flag. And God save the Welsh.
And the Irish had 3 times more athletes in the last Olympics than Wales had as part of Team GB. So that means there are literally dozens of Welsh athletes who could be competing in the Olympics, maybe not winning, but at least going there. But they don't, because we don't have a Welsh team. So just quickly then, about 2032. So the campaign. So what's the idea, Rob? Is this going to be a different campaign, or is it just like a branding, or is this particular things organised?
The first thing is it's an ambition. The second thing is it's going to provide us with a framework of how we're going to get there. I think we're looking at the moment on building on having a three country conference in Wales. With Scotland and Northern Ireland, and that's going to be to share ideas, to share resources, and look at what we can, look at what we can do. I think the idea as well with 2032 is that it brings the conversation to the forefront.
Right.
Prior to this announcement, I think people have been able to go, independence sometimes in the future never happens. Sometimes, well, now we're actually saying this is where we expect to see it. So that's going to force us to have the conversations, but it's going to force a lot of other people to have conversations as well. And we need to learn the lesson of Scotland. We need to make sure that there aren't questions that we look weak on. And it's easy for us to talk about currencies. We use whatever currency we want. That is the answer and the truth about it. But I think we're going to need to come up with at least versions that are far more sellable than that.
And YesCymru have been talking about this, and I'm as much part of as anyone, but I think we need to just maybe spend some money and getting some research and then printing. I mean, there's plenty of research about, but getting, and YesCymru, Radio YesCymru, the podcast, I've had various discussions on the economy and stuff, but we need to have something easy to read and definitive, which can be agreed on.
I mean, there's a chance in terms of that, with independence in your pocket, there's a chance of just developing and streamlining the arguments and the points.
Maybe it's time to just do a leaflet drop with just the independence in your pocket, which costs a lot of money. But I mean, if we just deliver those to all the houses in Wales, that'd be one hell of a huge effort. Or we did it in the newspaper a few years ago, and I think it's something we need to look at again.
It shows that we're serious, doesn't it? If we do something like that, it shows that we're serious and that we're that we get into every house in Wales. The one thing you'll know from being involved in YesCymru is you see people and you have conversations with them and they're asked about support and they're like, no, and you ask them why not, and it doesn't take long for people to warm towards the idea of Welsh independence if you can answer the questions. The economic question being the biggest one that comes up all of the time. But again, if you mentioned with Ireland before and athletes, if Wales at one point had a bigger economy than Ireland, and we're nowhere near now. So that shows what the power of independence can do on an economic basis as well, isn't it? So super exciting times, really.
So good. So basically, the conference with the other Celtic nations would be fab, and I think I'm gonna be maybe Camero-centric here. I think Scotland and Ireland need something like YesCymru. That seems to be missing from my point. Looking outside.
Really strange thing, Sean. It's really, really strange. Is that we meet with other people on quite a regular basis, and obviously we meet as ISEC as well with pan-European things. Yeah. And every time people come to do something with YesCymru, you can always sense a hint of envy in terms of what we've got in Wales and how effective it is. And I've seen that's with people from the Scottish movement, and certainly with Scotland now. I think all of those countries would like to have this unified group, and my goodness me, it's unified at the moment. Group marching forward, to try and bring constitutional change.
Okay, we'll draw the chat for a close. I mean, the big thing on the horizon for everyone is the Independence March in Aberystwyth on the 26th of September, the last Saturday in September in Aberystwyth. It's glorious in Aberystwyth today. I hope it'll be sunny.
Always glorious.
I mean, a lot of things to be confirmed, but starting in the castle, I think, going through town, then the prom, that's to be confirmed on speakers. And it's going to be a good event. I think it's going to be a bouncy event because, I mean, starting in the castle there, you've got a lot of clubs and cafes and pubs and stuff around there. So it'd be a good vibe. I think it'd be a sort of festival type vibe.
Yeah, so I think and more and more people tend to come up for a weekend now as well, don't they? So I know there's a gig on the Friday. There's a gig on the Friday night in a Llywdy, I think, and we're looking to put more things on over the course of the...
Yeah, I know the Melon Driver think tank having a discussion as well. They're going to get something. So there's going to be music, there's going to be just live music, people jamming, and then the rally itself, and then there's some speakers. So it will be a fab weekend, and if you're a student in Aberystwyth, pitch in because we need some help with stewarding and stuff like that. So that's the last Saturday. So I think that's going to be an important starting point. And the first, the Independence Rally, but it's quite difficult because, as we keep saying, we're 2 hours away from everyone. We're equally inconvenient for everyone. So everything is 2 hours away from Aberystwyth, essentially.
Do you know, it's really true, isn't it? We tend to meet at the moment. We, as a national governing body of YesCymru, we tend to have face-to-face meetings every 3 or 4, and we tend to meet. I used to meet in Aber. We tend now to meet in Llanidloes or Newtown because everyone can get to them. Everyone can get to them quicker than get to Aber, and we don't have any. And seriously, everyone. I can get to Dolgellau from Merthyr at the same time as I can get to Aberystwyth later on.
Yeah.
So it is a case of it's like, oh goodness me, we've got to go there, and that's not the feeling of arriving in Aberystwyth by any stretch of the imagination. It's the feeling. It's the feeling of the drive. But I was up in the area. I was in Pontefynach a couple of days ago with my son. So I was warming. I was warming to to the Ceredigion temperature and that during that time. So I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it. We'll be up for the weekend.
So basically, I live in Aberystwyth, so I feel about give us a helping hand in terms of stewarding and stuff like that. And it is going to be a good event. There's going to be a market there selling different stuff, so food, gifts, whatever, merchandise. There's going to be some music, live music. There's going to be discussion, and there's going to be a good feel. Rob, congratulations on being the chair. It's a big job, because it's an important movement, and there's quite a lot of pressure there. We're in exciting times. I don't know what's going to happen with this new muscular unionism, which sort of pretends it's cushy. We're going to have to navigate that. So it's a different situation, I think, from it was maybe 2 months ago. I think having a target is a good idea. It also ties in, I think, 2036 would be whatever, 600 years or whatever since the Act of Union, so-called, in 1536. So it'll be 500 years, wouldn't it? So I mean that's a big thing as well.
2036 will be 500 years. Yeah. Let's not get a 500 years of the Act of Union. I tell you what, you've sold
exactly. So I mean, I'd like to get out of the Union by there, and I think generally there'll be some kind of a vibe by about that time in any case, for some kind of generation change in any case. So I think we need to make sure that
and with a muscular unionism, we've got to have a like confidence Cymreig really in what we're doing.
Yep.
We've got to believe in what we've got to really believe in what we're doing, and we've got to believe that we're doing it for the right reasons, that we're doing it to make Wales a better place. And I think in the past sometimes we've maybe lacked the confidence, to push forward what we want, we really want to happen. And I don't think with YesCymru that's the case anymore. I think we really, really believe in something, and I think we're good enough to be able to get it. And so,
and also looking at the macro picture, I think by that time, I think the idea of Europe, I'm talking about European Union, anything in particular, I think people will feel, there needs to be some cooperation there. And I think it makes sense then for, why can't Wales just be one of the nations of Europe? With all the other nations, what are we faffing about with? We can't even control our own our policing force, and then we're sort of somehow meant to be sort of an equal partner in this union. Rob Hughes, outspoken enough there. We've had a good chat. Listen to the radio, YesCymru. There's loads of stuff in the past discussing things like economy was worth listening to. I look forward to the new generation. A big shout out to Phil Griffiths, who was the chairman till now. He did a mountain of work, loads of work there. So diolch yn fawr to you, Phil. Much appreciated. And it's exciting times for the movement from Cymru. Diolch yn fawr to you, Rob.
Diolch.